There are some things done in Germany that we had never seen before moving from the US to Germany that honestly just make a lot of sense. Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. Maybe you guys have seen it, the TikTok and Instagram reel trends of people making videos about things that just make sense in a specific location. If you haven't, these are videos of people showing things around a specific place like their home, a city, or a country, and they show things that seem extremely logical that maybe only they do there. Well, over the 2.5 years that we have lived in Germany, we have found a few things that we had never seen before, or we just simply do differently in the US. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today in our video. In Germany's defense, these just make sense. First, I have to say that we are originally from a state in the southern US called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern German state of Rhineland-Pfalz. And that both of these places have their own unique subcultures that may not be representative of the two countries as a whole. Therefore, let me know your individual experiences with these things in the comments below and where you are from. Also, if you're from a different country than these two, we want to hear about what these things are like where you live. And let's just remember, just because one place does something one way and another place does something another way, it doesn't always mean there are rights and wrongs. Maybe just simply different ways of doing things. As many of you guys are well aware of at this point, we are expecting our first baby in a couple of months, and therefore we have started to notice a lot more of how babies are raised in Germany versus what we are used to in the US. One big difference that we have seen is how little ones learn to ride bikes, which brings us to our first German thing that just makes sense, and that is balance bikes. A balance bike is a tiny little two-wheeled bike that doesn't have pedals and are just big enough that a toddler can sit on the bike and touch the ground with their feet. To move themselves and the bike, they kick their feet on the ground to propel themselves forward. This allows little kids to start to be able to feel how to balance on two wheels while remaining in control with their feet on the ground if needed from a very young age. And this is a true authentic German invention, as the first balance bike was called a Laufmaschine, was nicknamed the Dandy Horse, and was invented in 1817 in Mannheim by Karl Dreiss. In the US, little kids will typically start riding bikes with two training wheels on the back wheel, and then around 4 to 9 years old, with some kids earlier or later, they will take off the training wheels and learn to ride a bike on just two wheels. Because of this, a classic summertime scene in the US is a little kid wobbly on a two-wheel bike for the first time with a parent running behind them to catch them as they fall. However, in Germany, most little kids learn to balance themselves from the get-go on balance bikes, making the transition to bikes with pedals flawless. I'm not saying that you don't see the same scene with parents teaching their kids to balance on a bike in Germany, but in our 2.5 years over here, we see way more tiny kids zipping around on two wheels much earlier than Americans. In Germany, kids starting as early as 12 to 18 months are already using balance bikes over here, and therefore balance bikes simply seem to make sense for little ones to learn to balance from the very start. Now, I will put the caveat that balance bikes are starting to creep into the US, but overall they are very unknown, and we for sure saw our first ones once we moved over here to Europe. But let me know in the comments though, when did you learn to ride a bike and how did you do it? Was it with a balance bike? Also, as many of you know, I passed my German B1 language certification exam over a year ago, and I did so after taking part in an integration course at our local Volkshochschule. A Volkshochschule, or VHS for short, doesn't really have a great translation in English, or specifically American English, because schools like these don't really exist in the US. But we could just call it an adult education center to get the idea across of what they are. The closest thing in most American cities to a VHS would have to be a community college, but a VHS doesn't typically offer certifications or degrees for most of their courses, making them a little bit different. Volkshochschules really are community schools set up to encourage lifelong learning and continuing education for all in German communities, and that is exactly why Volkshochschulen are the next thing on my list that just makes sense. These schools are funded by multiple different avenues, such as grants from the state, grants from the municipality it is in, subsidies from the federal government, private donations, etc. And one stipulation though is that these schools must earn more than 1/3 of their financial resources from enrollment fees for classes. Because of how these schools are funded, they are able to offer fairly inexpensive classes to make it accessible to everyone in the community, and classes are available during the weekdays, nights, and on the weekends depending on the class. These schools are found throughout the country, and it is not hard to find one near you. They offer classes on nearly any subject or hobby you can imagine. Want to learn a language? Want to learn to paint? How about learn to use a computer? What about a wine tasting class? Water jogging? The history of rock and roll? Or professional development? I've been continuously amazed looking at the breadth of curriculum these schools offer German communities, and it has provided me lots of entertainment to see just how unexpected some of these themes are. I've also found them to be a great way of meeting other people in the local community with common goals or interests, as well as making them something that just makes sense. Real quick guys, I want to take a moment to thank all of our patrons over on Patreon for supporting our channel. What you guys do is such a huge support to our channel, and I want you to know again that I appreciate it. Also, if you all watching would like to take a moment to hit those like and subscribe buttons, it would mean a lot. Now, back to the video. When we bought our first car in Germany, I went to get a license plate, and I was trying to do the entire process in German, even though I had only been taking classes for about 2 months. Because my German wasn't great at the time, at one point I thought they asked me if I had a preference for the numbers and letters on the license plate before issuing it to me, but coming from the US, I didn't think this made sense based on how we are assigned plates back home. So I assumed I just didn't understand the German correctly. So after awkwardly staring at each other and not answering their question, they just moved on and randomly assigned numbers and letters to me like I would have expected them to do. However, the next thing in Germany that just makes sense is the fact that you get to choose the letters and numbers on your license plates, and how easy and cheap it is to do so. In the US, the rules are different from state to state when it comes to license plates, but overall, we kind of have 3 general broad categories of license plates: the state issued standard plates, specialty plates, and vanity plates. The much more common standard state issued plates generally just have random numbers and letters on them, and you just accept what you are given. Specialty plates deviate from the standard state design plate and cost extra money to add extra flair to your vehicle, and vanity plates are plates in which you can write a special phrase unique to your vehicle on rather than random assigned letters and numbers. Each state has different prices for these, ranging from $5 all the way up to $100, and it can take an extremely long time to do the application process and to receive a vanity plate. As an example, in our home state of Oklahoma, the fee for a vanity plate is $25. You submit an application with what you want on your plate, and then it can take up to 4 months to hear back and receive your plate if it is approved. In Germany, on the other hand, all you must do is pay €10.20, add another €2.60 if you reserve online, and you can get a unique vanity-like plate on the standard issued plates on the same day. When you are getting a new license plate, you are actually allowed to pick the letters and numbers on the standard plate, or you can reserve it in advance. Now, there are a few exceptions when I say you can pick whatever you want. First, obviously, what you want must still be available and not already on someone else's car. Second, letter or number combinations that have Nazi connotations are forbidden. And third, the first letters on the plate represent the city or district a car is registered in, and that is mandatory. For example, Berlin plates will have a B, or Dortmund has a DO. After these standard letters, you can choose the letters and numbers, and this is when people start to have fun. Common things to do are initials, birth dates, anniversaries, or whatever comedic genius strikes a person. In fact, if you have ever heard the stereotype that Germans aren't funny, all you need to do is just take a road trip on the Autobahn and read the plates along the way to prove this stereotype wrong. Coming up with your own plate numbers is great because it makes it easier to remember, and I love how much easier Germany makes it rather than sending in an application that can take weeks to months to be approved. And I would like to know, what are some of the funniest license plate combinations that you have ever seen? In line with the auto theme, one thing Americans notice when they travel to Germany is that the cars tend to be smaller than typical American vehicles. In particular, where we come from in the southern US, a lot of people drive pickup trucks. I really miss my truck. But often trailing those smaller cars in Germany that we immediately noticed after moving here that was a little bit unusual to us were trailer hitches on sedans. In the US, if you're going to tow something, you typically are going to use your truck. Or if you don't have a truck, you call a friend with a truck. If you don't have a friend with a truck, you don't tow that thing. In Europe, we often see small cars pulling things like full-on travel trailers that to Americans looks quite comical. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say right now that I honestly know absolutely nothing about cars. I wish I did, but I don't. But I think many people's first thoughts about this subject is that Americans just like big cars and that Americans wrongfully believe that we need a big truck to pull something. And to some extent, this may be true. However, I started looking into why we see small cars in Europe pulling so much more than cars in the US, and I was surprised to learn that one reason is that we have different ways of measuring towing capacity safety standards between the US and Europe. This means that often the exact same vehicle in Europe and in the US will have different towing capacities, with the car in the US having much lower legal towing capacity limits. Or in some cases, it is even more extreme. For example, I did a quick search to see what the towing capacity limits of the first German car I thought of, a Volkswagen Golf, was, and an American website listed that the Volkswagen Golf, along with all of its variations, isn't designed to tow any cargo and has their towing capacity limit listed as towing not recommended. However, a quick search on a German car website, and I found they list a Volkswagen Golf 7 does have a towing capacity of 680 kilograms to 1800 kilograms under different situations. Now, if any of you would like to explain further the reasons for these differences in the comments, I would welcome you to do it. However, I find it great that in Germany you don't need a truck to pull something, and your small family car can easily attach a trailer to it for moving, a bike rack to bring bikes with you on a road trip, or to pull a massive camper van that dwarfs the vehicle pulling it. Now, I want to know in the comments from our German viewers, how many of them have ever taken a trip to the US and were shocked when they tried to pay with their credit card at a restaurant and the waiter just carried away their card where they could no longer see it? Well, this is something that for whatever reason, Americans put up with, and after having lived in Germany and have seen another way, I don't know why we do. If you don't understand what I'm talking about because you have never been to the US, in the United States, when you're paying for your bill with a card, a waiter will bring you the check, and you typically will just sit your credit card with the bill on the end of the table, and the waiter will come by, grab it, and then walk off to wherever the cashier is in the restaurant. Often, this is not in view, and you have no idea where your card has gone, but we just trust they will charge it for the billed amount and then bring it back to you. Now, I'm not even going to try and pretend that nothing ever goes wrong when this is done. It absolutely is not unheard of that nefarious things happen to cards when they are carried away, although it isn't that common. For what it is worth, from my own personal experience, I have paid with card probably tens of thousands of times in the US, and I have never had any issue with this system, although I do know some people who had credit card information stolen. For you Americans wondering what the other way is, in Germany, they will bring a portable card reader to your table with the bill, and often you don't even hand the waiter the card, but rather they hold the card reader down to you, and then you tap or insert your card into the machine, so you are always in control of your own card. This is, of course, when a place actually even accepts card in Germany, but I'm not going to go there because this is a video about things that make sense in Germany. But the transparency of doing it this way and how you never are put in a position where you must trust a total stranger to walk away with all of your money just makes sense. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is, what is an accomplishment you have done that made yourself the most proud of yourself? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you in our next video. 1, 2, corner, corner. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check. With some kids, wait, what? The much more common standard